Lance Palmer back here on the program. The Millionaire. He's going to be taking on Alex Gilpin at PFL 2 on May 23rd. Lance, how are you, man?
Doing well. I'm actually headed over to Mark Henry's house right now for training and feeling good. A lot of the grunt work of this camp is done. About one more hard week, but really all the little technical stuff that we've tried to work on for this camp is all sealed up, and now it's just sharpening up all the tools for the last week and a half.
That's great. Yeah, and that is sort of where I wanted to start this interview. You are training in New Jersey with Mark Henry and his great team. How did that come together? Because I know last time we spoke, you were in Vegas training at Extreme.
Yeah, it was a decision I wanted to make last year, but with Timur Valiev training out here, he was in the tournament at the time as well, so it was just something I couldn't do, and I didn't feel right coming here and stepping on his toes, and he's been here a lot longer than I have, so that was the main reason I went to Vegas last year, and obviously because Joseph Benavidez he's one of my best friends, and he had a fight coming up in June of last year, and we kind of just made it work. Whereas this year, I was able to kind of make the decision and do it that way. And it's for me, it's more of a family decision, being closer to home. My wife and I live in Columbus, Ohio, so it's still strenuous because it's still it's an 8-hour drive to New Jersey and back each way, but it's a lot closer than having to fly back and forth from Vegas, and a lot easier too. So it's, I mean, that was one of the big reasons. And then obviously the guys here like Frankie, Edgar, Marlon Marias, Eddie Alvarez, Zabit, Timur, the list goes on, of all great partners. And then obviously coaching wise, Ricardo Almeida, Henzo Gracie's is only about an hour up the road, and then Mark Henry also. So I mean, it's a place I've always wanted to come train, and I finally made the decision just to make it happen.
Now, the connection to that gym, was that through Ali, your manager, or how did you end up training there?
Somewhat, but I've kind of known Frankie and Marlon. I had always kind of talked to them and seen them and Mark Henry at all the fights on Fight Week, and with Timor all last year, I kind of saw them at fights, and it was one of those things where it was like I knew that we would get along and we would fit in well together, and it was just something that I wanted to do, and I feel like the feeling is mutual. I feel like they're happy having me here, and I add a lot to the team, and they add a lot to my game. So I think it's kind of a nice little trade-off.
Yeah, it's a great camp, and we'll talk about training camp and the matchup in a second. But first, we haven't talked since you won the $1 million. What did you spend the money on? And congratulations on that, by the way.
Honestly, I haven't really spent anything yet. I have obviously like paying my coaches and my manager and stuff like that was the first things, but my wife and I refinanced our house, so I put a little bit more money down on the house, and then other than that, I mean, I bought a car, and that was about it. But I didn't pay cash for the car, obviously, because that's not the smart way to do it. So I didn't really put any cash into the car, and most of my cash is still liquid and just building and making its own money for me now. So I've made the right investments with it.
I got to say, out of all the millionaires who won last year, you had the best video after you won the fight. There's that great video of you in the car, kind of bumping to the Little Duval song, Smile. What prompted that? Because I thought that was hilarious.
Honestly, that was just pure happiness. That was right after I for go through, and I was in my truck because I own a snow removal and landscape company in Columbus. And I was driving to one of our locations where we do work, and I was like, one of our customers, and I was driving there, and I just was like, man, that is so crazy. And there was a lot of, I think it was mainly because there was a lot of people on social media that were kind of being haters about it, saying, oh, you'll never get paid, you'll never through. And so once I saw because the 800,000 was the wire that we got after our drug test came back. So after that 800,000 wire came through into my account, and I saw all that go in, I was like, what? And that song was on at the same time, so it just worked perfectly. And I was like, man, this is insane. And I mean, I've had points of MMA where I honestly went probably months, I would say 2 or 3 months of where my wife was paying all the bills. Like we were living in a tiny apartment in California when I first started. Just like where I've come from, where I've started in this, and I was mowing lawns in California and teaching private lessons and barely getting by to the point where I literally had negative money in my account. And now I'm at a point where I actually was able to invest money and put money away for my retirement and my future. And that's something that not very many people are able to say from MMA, but I'm lucky enough to be one of those guys that is able to do that. I mean, money doesn't last forever. Money comes and goes. So I'm more happy about getting through the tournament and winning the tournament and being able to be healthy the whole year. But it definitely helps that was one of the prizes at the end of the year. There's no doubt.
Was there an opportunity to go to the UFC after you won the $1 million, or did you always just want to stay with PFL because of the money?
I think mainly the option wasn't there because after you win the tournament or after you win the season of PFL, you're automatically into the next year.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that was never really an option to begin with. But I mean, from what I've heard from a lot of people, even veterans that are in the UFC and things like that, I mean, there's a very small amount of people who are taken care of financially on that end in the UFC. And so, I mean, right now I'm happy with PFL and I'm happy with my regular fight purses in PFL before we get into the October, postseason. So these first two fights are my regular fight purses, and I'm excited to go in and make that kind of money just on these fights. I mean, I had teammates when I was in Sacramento where when I was a WSOF champ, I was making more than those guys, and they were veterans in the UFC. And it's not a knock on anybody or anything. It's just they take care of me, and it's not a place I want to leave because, I mean, they're doing me and my family well, and obviously I have to perform to be able to do that. But I feel like that we have a great relationship. Ray Sefo, Carlos, even though he's not with us this year, he moved on to tennis. But I mean, everybody in PFL and from World Series of Fighting, I have a great relationship with all those people, and that's something that I'm not really willing to give up unless there's an opportunity that's bigger and greater that I feel I would mesh well with.
No, you made the right call, especially now with them being on ESPN. I mean, it's really a good time to be on the PFL roster. I think you definitely made a good decision there. Let's talk about Alex Gilpin, your opponent. 12-1 record, fought on Contender Series. What do you know about him? How do you feel like you match up against him?
He's playing. I know he likes he likes to use his submission game. He likes to kind of wrestle and use that a lot. He has decent overhand right, and it's not big, but I know he's good at what he does. So, and that's something I've dealt with. I mean, we've studied him. We know exactly, style and what he's means. And this first fight is to get points to go into this fight. Hopefully get a first seed or second seed. But overall, I'm looking to go out and get the win because I know what he brings to the table and I know he's a tough opponent. So I'm looking forward to the fight, though.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. Who's going to be in your corner for this fight?
I'm going to have my corner last year. He's out in Vegas. I'm going to have him in my corner, and then Ricardo Almeida and Mark Henry.
Okay. And how do you see this fight playing out? We like, obviously, everyone likes seeing the finishes. Is that how you see this fight unfolding?
I really do. I see myself getting the finish just because I've been working a lot more, and even to get the finishes I want throughout the postseason. So even though my performances were okay and I did well and I won the fights, I wasn't really happy with not getting finishes in those last three fights of the season. So I plan to get the finish, and I feel like the way that I've worked with my striking with Mark these last 8 weeks that I've been here and just sharpening things up, I feel like I'm not going to chase a KO or TKO, but I feel like that option can be there just because my wrestling background, and I can kind of set things up a little differently. But I'll give you the submission win also. I mean, I know that I can submit guys on the ground, so if the fight goes there, I know that I can do that. And I also know that he's decent from front headlock positions and Darce chokes and stuff like that. So it's one of those things you just have to be aware in the fight, and wherever the fight goes, I feel like I can win. So I have that confidence going into it, but I know he's a tough opponent. So I'm going to be ready on fight night.
You mentioned training in Las Vegas previously. One of your former teammates, I should say, Jeremy Kennedy, is now in the tournament. Have you talked to him at all? Because there's a potential that you guys could fight each other.
I've talked to him here and there. We have the same manager, Ali, so we talked a little bit about it. The season started and stuff like that. I mean, he was one of my main training partners last year, and I was one of his main training partners. I think he had 2 or 3 fights throughout that year when I had all mine also, and he was with Brave at the time. So we were helping each other get ready for those fights, and I wish him luck throughout the tournament. Obviously, if he has to fight me, then we have to cross that path when we get there. But there's no like animosity or bad blood at all. I mean, it's like this is our livelihood. If we have to fight each other to get to that next, that next spot, then that's what's got to happen. But I dealt with this many times before, just because Ali manages a lot of guys that I've had to fight. I mean, he managed Siler, and I fought Siler before PFL. I fought Siler in the finals of PFL. So I've dealt with this before, and it's not really anything new to me. The only difference last year, but last year was last year, and I'm making a lot of improvements right now. So I'm just focused on Gilpin right now, and then if we get to that point, I have a feeling that that's going to be a quarter or semifinal fight, or maybe finals. But I know these first 2 fights, it's probably not something that's going to happen. But later this year, maybe. But he's a tough opponent. He's a tough fighter. He's a great guy. Like, him and his fiance are great people. And I had a great relationship with him when I lived out there, and we worked hard together. We trained hard together. So I hope he does well throughout this year, and hopefully we can meet in the final.
One of your other former teammates, TJ Dillashaw, obviously in the news with all the stuff that's happened with him. What was your reaction when all that went down? Someone who used to train with him. I don't know what your relationship is like with him now, but obviously kind of shocking to the rest of us.
Yeah, my relationship is like, I'm cool with every single person I've ever trained with. Nobody's ever done me wrong. If somebody has done me wrong, then I don't have a good relationship with them. But I've never had a problem with TJ. We use the same strength and conditioning coach, and that's about as far as our like training goes together now. And since I do it in New Jersey, I don't do it with them anymore. I do it on my own out here. And I just talk to Coach Cal on the phone a few times a week and stay in touch. But as far as the drug test goes, I mean, that's just something that, I mean, when it comes down to it, you can't, what can you say? You did it, and there's other guys easy because they can deny it because it wasn't something that had to be injected. It was something that they could have, they could have said it was a tainted supplement, this or that. But all those guys that have been caught for stuff, they meant to do that. There's no, you don't just say, I had no idea that was in my supplement. Darn, I had no clue. So I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame on him that he felt that he had to do that to win, and on top of that. But it's also a shame because of all the other guys that train at Training Lab, like myself and Juan Archuleta and Steven Taylor at the world team level. We're kind of getting this this like flow of negativity from people on social media about using EPO and stuff like that. And it's like, with the training alone, I only worked with Coach Cal for 5 weeks for my finals fight, and he had my body firing on all cylinders in that short amount of time. And it's even crazier now because I had a full camp to work with him. Just the things he does metabolically and changing your metabolic system and how you burn food and how you burn energy. And I feel like you don't need anything else. Like, I'm lighter now and stronger now than I have been. I don't need any even there, but there's no reason for me to do anything else because my confidence is right here, and the confidence that I get from Coach Cal pushing me to beyond my limits. There's days I'll text him after I get done with a workout, and I'm like, "Are you trying to kill me, or what are you trying to do here?" He's like, "There's a purpose for everything. Trust me." So I mean, that's the only confidence I need. I mean, I've done this stuff my whole life with competing, and I honestly don't need any help. If somebody beats me, they beat me on their best night, and that's the way it is.
Last question before I let you go. You're an Ohio guy. I know last night, unfortunately, things did not go the way for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They got knocked out by the Bruins. Did you watch the playoffs at all, just as an Ohio guy?
I did. I watched. I was really impressed when they beat the Lightning, especially in a shutout. The Bruins are a tough team. I mean, they're always a perennial powerhouse, no matter how far they make it. But it was sad to see because usually, I mean, I'm a Cleveland guy, first and foremost, but our hockey's in Columbus. And since I live in Columbus, everybody's like Columbus Blue Jackets, Ohio State football. Like those are the two things in Columbus that everybody loves. So when it's playoff season, it's insane in Columbus. I mean, people love hockey in Ohio. I mean, it's like the East Coast and Midwest and up in Canada, everybody loves hockey, and that's like we get up for that stuff. So to see them lose, it sucked, but to have them get this far and show that they can make it to the playoffs and be a force in the playoffs was really good, and it's promising.
No, I agree with that. I'm a little disappointed in how they handled the McAvoy hit. I mean, it seems like the refs aren't really doing their job to a certain extent. So that to me was kind of the only sour part because, obviously the Bruins won. Congratulations. But that McAvoy hit, man, that stuff's dangerous. You can't be doing that in the sport. So.
Well, that's the thing too, is there's times that they'll call stuff that's like, are you kidding me? You're going to call that, and then they'll handle things the opposite end of it too, where you're like, okay, well, if you're going to call that, how come this didn't get called? I know it's a hard job being a referee in any sport, but you can't be picking and choosing what you want to call and what you don't want to call. I mean, I see it with basketball right now in the playoffs too. I mean, there's some crazy fouls that they're calling, and then they're not calling certain fouls that are blatant. So that's how it goes in every sport. But yeah, that was pretty bad. That was brutal.
I'll tell you what's not going to be bad. This card, May 23rd, it's PFL 2. What a stacked event this is. Lance, thank you so much for the time, man. It was great catching up with you. Just remind people where they can find you on social media, and if you got any sponsors or shout-outs, the floor is yours, man.
Awesome. Yeah, Lance Palmer, LancePalmer on Twitter, on Instagram. Lance Palmer MMA is my Facebook page. My sponsor is beatkicks.com. They're machine washable headphone curtain. Always since the very beginning, fight last year in PFL season 1. They're with me again this year. And I'm always looking forward to these fights. I'm looking forward to people's reactions. I'm always coming to put on a show. So this is something that, this is what I live for. I love this. I love the time coming up to a fight, and I'm looking forward to it.